storytelling, it makes you care about something. And
information in a linear way. Really, we're processing it in a more complex way, and it's case by case.
Based on the evolution of technology and communication, which is perfect for storytelling.
I showed the children how to program the character, the sprite.
Thank you all for being here today. We are very happy to have a full webinar room, virtual room. Real quick before we start, if you have any questions, please, you can always type them into the chat. We will read them out if possible, or we'll keep them for the end of the webinar. We'll have a Q&A in the end of the webinar. So if you have questions, just type them into the chat and ask them. This is our agenda for today. First of all, we'll tell you who we are. We'll have a little bit of an icebreaker activity, which is related to STEAM. And then we'll hear about how or why storytelling matters in teaching 21st century skills. And it's also a big reason why we are here. We'll hear Alix-Anne Bush explaining us how she uses storytelling in her dual language immersion program. And then we'll hear Matthew Banham, who is an educational content expert, who will tell us about how we integrate storytelling in RoboWunderkind projects. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So I'll introduce the three speakers for today. We have Jamie Gidry, who was an elementary school teacher in Arlington Public Schools in Virginia. We'll have Alix-Anne Bush, who will explain about her experience today. She's currently teaching in Prince George's County. And we have Matthew Bannon, a K-12 content development specialist and former teacher at Next Generation School in Champaign, Illinois. Who is RoboWunderkind and what are we doing, or what do we do? We are a STEM program, and our goal is to inspire children for STEAM careers. We do this by developing 21st century skills. We have an ecosystem of products. So we have a modular robotics kit, as well as a coding app, which works in different interfaces depending on the level of the students. And we have created a STEAM Hub, which is a content platform where you find everything you need to go into the classroom and teach STEAM. And also we do professional development. We do professional development courses in person, on-demand professional development. We have different kinds of that. So we are around the globe in the United States, in Venezuela, in Austria, Europe, in Portugal, Ukraine, different places. And we're very happy to be here today with you and have so many teachers from the United States. And I will hand over now to Jamie to ask some questions and get to know you a little better.
Okay, welcome everyone. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Matthias. I want to just know, I got to find out where you all heard about the webinar, but I would like to just get an idea of what you think of when you think of STEM or STEAM in the classroom. You can type a word, a phrase, anything into the chat, and we're going to look at some common themes we might find. Real world and engaging programming, helping students be ready for the future. Hands-on experience, engaged learning, engineering and design process, real world and engaging, innovation, action, absolutely. And all of those things we're incorporating into, we used to develop those 21st century skills, but we also can, exactly, engineering and how it applies to everyday life. I love that one. And we're gonna talk about why. That's exactly what we're talking about today, how it applies to everyday life and how storytelling is going to make that connection for our learners. Before we get into it, I found this short video that really, I think, encompasses and frames why stories matter in the STEAM classroom to build those 21st century skills.
The most successful scientists are the ones that not only can crunch the numbers and do the data, but can also explain their thinking to a real world audience.
I think people learn better when they can relate to the information that's provided to them.
And if you don't really convey it in a good framework, then you're not going to have a convincing story.
And if people aren't convinced by your story, they're not going to believe whatever results you have to say.
For example, in Mauritius, people knew that there was a problem. Corals were dying, fish were disappearing, but nobody really felt the need to do anything because it didn't affect them directly. So telling the story of a fisherman and his family really made them feel like it was their family, it was their story. It was their lives that was involved, and they really felt like they had to do something about it right now.
You have to give the who, what, where, when, and why. You have to tell them what's going on, but why do we even care? Storytelling, it makes you care about something. You're not going to work to change anything in this world if you do not care about it.
You're not going to work to change anything in the world if we don't care about it. And that is exactly where the storytelling comes in with our students, because they are our future. If we take a look at this scientifically, what makes humans different from any other species, right? Why did we survive? Thinking about earlier species that were larger, bigger, they were innately hunters and gatherers. The basic premise of this is the reason that we were able to survive is because, as early humans, because we formed groups, we formed communities, tribes, and we began telling one another stories that were passed down from generation to generation. And that's what that contributed to our survival. And so the very essence of being human is based in storytelling and communicating our ideas to one another. So another participation, we're going to head into the chat. Think about a time when you smelled something or heard something and immediately you thought of a time. You thought of this story that you just had to share. Like, oh my goodness, I smell this. I know everybody has one. Tell me the smell and maybe just a brief phrase that tells us what the event was for you. A certain cologne, it makes you remember a memorable time with your parent. The smell of fall, absolutely. Vanilla, if you give a mouse a cookie. I love it. And that's because scientifically, our brains are not linear as some may think. When we hear stories and when we're receiving information, we're activating so many different parts of our brain. And that's why we might smell something, or we might hear a song, or we might be in a specific room that has certain plants in it that might remind us of a time. Because when we're taking in information, we're not only processing in Broca's area, our language processing, but we're getting into our olfactory cortex, all of these things, and stories are engaging all of those functions simultaneously. So while we might think we receive information in a linear way, really we're processing it in a more complex way, and it's case by case based on all of these different functions that are being activated. So when we think of STEAM and storytelling, right, in American education system, often we separate the subjects, right? We might teach, ELA for this block, and we have a math block, and we're lucky if we get to science, right? And we have this block for social studies, and they're very segregated, and they're in these silos. Our goal with storytelling is to take these different concepts out of that silo so that we're combining them in a fluid way. So we're using our stories to integrate. So we can think of ELA, but we can use our storytelling in science. We can use our storytelling in engineering. And when students can take their ideas and explain their engineering process, they can write a story telling why they designed their device in this manner. This is the problem that it solves. They are in fact creating a story. So when we include storytelling in our STEAM classroom, we are giving our students a chance to thrive and excel in their futures.
Thank you, Jamie, for giving us some input about what storytelling actually does with our brains and why storytelling is important. And one of the takeaways for me personally is that storytelling makes me care about things. And if I want my students to care about what we do in a classroom, if I have a story And if we tell a story, it all makes more sense. And I think if we can find a way to bring this into the classrooms, learning is fun. I'm very excited to now hand over the word to Alix-Anne, who is a second grade teacher in Maya Angelou French Immersion World IB School. And she is going to explain us a little bit how she does use storytelling and real life projects to make her students care about her lessons.
Hello, my name is Alix-Anne Bush. I teach at Maya Angelou French Immersion World IB School. We're located in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I teach second grade. And when I got on board with Robo Wonderkind, I went ahead and looked at how I can use it for specifically collaboration, building team skills, and language learning. So these kids are in their third year of the immersion program. A lot of them are still emerging in the language. And we have a few that are at the A1 level, which is pretty much beginners. As we well know, coding is universally in English, but it's nice to start building that vocabulary also with the French. So we start, of course, by introducing the vocabulary terms with the Robo Wonderkind. So you have that like visual, like la tête, the head, la connexion or les connexions, the connections, les roues, le moteur, the motor, and then of course the application itself, coder, and then how to do the codage. So we started it by doing it during our IB unit of inquiry on how do we express ourselves. And we look specifically at the evolution of technology and communication, which is perfect for storytelling. And so we were looking at renewable energy. So we ended up looking at windmills as a class. And so we researched the renewable energies, and then we came up with different projects. So our first project was to make what it looks like in the past. You have your traditional windmills and les moulins à vent, and then and how it's nothing new. It's something that's been around for centuries. And then of course, now we've been able to modernize it. Moulin à vent becomes the éolienne in French. And basically that's wind turbines. And we use the Robo Wonderkind blocks to build it. The kids, what's great, it's like Legos. So they played around with it. They looked at different coatings. And we looked at different models. We had to think about, okay, a windmill, even in the past, like it had not only the blades that turn to capture the energy, but also the head can turn to follow the wind in order to capture the energy. So that they had to apply like the past technology, but also modernize it to today's technology using. And so we went ahead and built them together as a class, and students, brainstormed with one another. And our winning design, it had to be well balanced. It had to be able to rotate. They added a light to show that, okay, this is how the energy is captured once the blades have turned. And then later on, as they were building the blocks, they also had to modify the codes. Like some codes were too simple and not all the elements were moving. And it really got them trying not only to use the engineering process, but also use the language and storytell how they got there and why they got there.
Thank you, Alix-Anne, for giving us a little bit of an insight in what you did in your classroom. Is there any questions for Alix-Anne at this time?
Alix-Anne, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you were introducing these concepts, did you use any storytelling to frame the work they were going to do to kind of gain their interest, or were you allowing them to create their own stories at the end?
A little bit of both. We do have a text in one of our textbooks about the evolution of technology, specifically in transportation. But we had earlier looked at how there's a student that brought up like the idea of, okay, well, things are cleaner now than they were before because of kind of the pandemic. And that's, we were coming out of the pandemic. On top of it, these were kids that had been mostly virtual. And so they really needed these activities to help build like team building skills again. But so we were also in science looking at renewable energies. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we landed as a class on the windmills and like wind powered energy. Mm-hmm. And then after that, they kind of went in their own way. We first broke it down by, okay, can we build like, before building the Robo-Wonderkind, can we build like a simpler form? So we looked at, okay, we're taking a pencil or a straw, a push pin, and simply like, like pinwheels that you plant outside and you let the wind blow. Mm-hmm. And then by having done that, we're like, okay, well, that's kind of like what the old windmills were like. Now, how do we adapt it to the Robo-Wonderkind?
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So they were taking their personal story, right? COVID,
yeah,
air, sanitization, and they were taking their personal story and applying it. I get it. Yeah. That's great. Comment from Dr. Rosales. Excellent work, Alix-Anne.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have strategies that they might use to bring storytelling into content to help build that connection?
Well, the last year I used the robots for my Spanish class in math. I teach in first grade, so the students use the form for the robots, the different pieces, and create your different robots and enjoy the activity.
Thank you for sharing.
Matthew Bannon's going to give you some insights in how teaching content is created with the aspect of storytelling.
Thanks, Matthias, for having me. And I love seeing Robo in work in the classroom, Alix-Anne. So thanks for sharing what you've been able to do. I work with Robo-Wonderkind. I lead the content development team. And the one thing that we really think about is how can we anchor everything we make in a story? How can we give kids the chance to experience a new story, a new theme, a new scenario, and use our modular robotics kit to solve a problem in the story or tell the actual story itself through their own creation? So this is a screenshot of our STEAM hub. This is where we put all of our content that teachers have access to. We'll be launching a new version soon, which I'm really excited about. And we have a lot of content up there that's, again, rooted in a story. So things like beach cleanup, mission on Mars, let's build a city farm, puts STEAM learning in a lot of different contexts. We've got ELA activities next to a robotics activity, math activities that have to be solved through coding. And it's all within the context of real life scenario, something that helps kids put their learning in context. One project that has storytelling right at the center of it is My Town. So this is a 3-lesson project. As you can see, we have a lot of different ways you can use the Robo-Wonderkind robotics kit to make actual characters, to bring things to life. So the idea behind this project is that kids talk about what a town is. What kind of people, vehicles, tools does your town need to operate? What kind of things like that are in our own town? And how can we make robots that could take some of these roles on? And you can see some pictures there. And so once we sort of preview what a town is, kids get to explore and share what they know. We give them the opportunity to tell a story about a town or multiple stories all through their entire creation. And they'll create an entire little town, an entire little universe that they're completely in control of, and learn about robotics and coding along the way. All of our lesson plans come with a teacher guide. So a place for you to plan the lesson, gives you everything you need to know. Also student materials for projecting or printing, so you can engage students in every step of the way. So a chart, got to talk about the needs and wants. What's important in a town? Review vocabulary words, depending on the age of the students. So if we're going to build a robot for a town, it has to have a purpose. You know, when kids pick up the robot, they're going to just start plugging things together wherever they want. And of course, the tool is great for that, for play and exploring. But if we're going to build a robot that can tell the story of a town, each robot we make needs a purpose. So here are some examples of the robots that you could include in a town, or you could turn it over to your students and let them completely make something up on their own that could fit. We try to be flexible inside an anchored storytelling framework that you can turn over to students for pure creativity, or lead as an instructor and a teacher towards a specific goal.
Thank you, Matthew, for sharing what's behind creating great content for classrooms. I think this was a lot of input in a very short period of time, but that's exactly how we wanted to create this webinar, because our time is limited and we want to give you some inputs, something you can work with. And we'll use this time right now to ask and answer more questions.
Kimberly Jones, I see she put in the chat a comment about using dance and music with their storytelling. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Hi. So this is my second year with computer science. And I guess my supervisor, she gave us Scratch Junior. And so we choose our character, we call them sprites. And it reminded me when I saw that building, it was a building there, I showed the children how to program the character, the sprite, to talk, to sing, and dance. It was really neat. It was really cool. And then I learned how to put the music in the background. Now, is there another website or something else out there where I can use for the storytelling?
Scratch Junior is probably the best resource for you if you want to do tech and storytelling, just, straight up on one place. I know Scratch Junior can allow you to create different scenes. So as your students get more complex, you can really add and on to a story over time. Yep.
And I also did nursery rhymes. You can use your own voice. And like I showed the children, Itsy Bitsy Spider or Mary Had a Little Lamb. It was really neat. It was really neat.
I've seen kids do amazing things with Scratch Junior. And if they are getting really proficient, you feel like they're kind of hitting the limit. Moving to Scratch on its own can really take them to the next level. There is more reading involved, but not that much. It's just learning a few keywords to associate with like each of those control blocks. So that's great. And that's the way that Robo Wonderkin's coding is set up too. There's a purely visual side, so you can make and control a pretty complex robot just with pictures. But then for the students who can read and operate at a higher level, there's a more text block-based coding as well.
What devices do you use for block coding with Robo?
Any of our coding interfaces, right? So we start very simple with visual coding, and then we go up until basically Scratch coding. We call it Blockly. It is exactly the same logic like Scratch. You can use each of the interfaces on the same device. It's all within one app, and you can just switch between the different interfaces. Now, we are compatible with Chromebooks. We are compatible with Mac OS, with Windows, iOS, and Android. So usually every device that you have in a classroom should be covered. If you have a device which is different than that, please send me an email. I need to send that over to our developers team. But we did a really good job in making sure we can cover all of the devices that are used in schools. So if you have a question about how much does that cost or how would that work, how can a school start working, grab your smartphones right now. Very easy. Open your camera, scan the QR code, just schedule a free implementation call. Some of the teachers that are here today are already in the community. The ones that are not, join our community. Thank you so much for being here today. Feedback is really important. If you have feedback for us, please scan this or click the link when we send you the presentation in our follow-up. We want to know what you liked about the webinar. We want to know what you missed on the webinar. And we also want to know what other topics you would like to be invited for. Thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye. See you next time.